I consider myself a folk artist. I just paint monuments to people that I admire or who represent something that I admire on walls. I remember my parents would always let me paint on the walls of my bedroom, on the walls of the garage. It was just more satisfying to me to be able to walk by and see them in context with the room than it was to just the little pieces that I would do on paper, usually typewriting paper or lined paper. There's something about it that it influenced the whole larger area. It was in context with almost architectural. I think that the first thing I did that I really took notice of and was really proud of myself was I did a drawing back, it must have been the late 40s, maybe 49 or so, of Roy Rogers from a comic book probably, or a photograph. And it looked just like him. I probably look at it now, it'd be crap, but to me it was very satisfying. And so I liked the idea of being able to draw people. And I love drawing people. I've tried everything else. I was an abstract expressionist in college, but it really wasn't me. And I've kept drawing. Pencil is still probably my favorite medium, and even painting. I don't really know how to paint. I just draw in color. You know, it's still like drawing with pencil. You're sort of starting off dark and then going lighter and lighter and lighter. You see things dark to light, and that's how I do color. My first couple of murals were really monochromatic. I did Steve McQueen first, and that was all in blues. I was teaching at Otis during the early 80s, I think from about 80 to 83, 84. And the Olympics came, and I got an opportunity to paint a couple of people that whose work I really admired. Lita Albuquerque, who was also teaching at Otis, I always loved her work, and Jim Morphesis, who's one of my favorite painters. And so I painted them across from each other on the freeway. So up until from 71 till 83, I did everything myself. But then using Lita and using some of my students from Otis as assistants, I've used assistants ever since. The location affects my work utterly. I mean, I don't even have anything. I don't even dare conceive of it until I see it within the environment. I mean, everything affects it, from trees to street lamps to other buildings to signage. It has to be in exactly the right place, and so it just feels right. So I proposed the idea of painting Dr. J, a three-story monument of Dr. J, and had an assistant or two helping me do it. It went up, and suddenly 6 weeks were gone by, and there was nothing on the wall, and then all of a sudden in 2 days, there he was. And it was so strange because people would stop in the middle of their rush hour, and they would open their car doors and get out and walk over and say, "Hey, is that a picture or something?" They didn't know what it was because all of a sudden it appeared and they could see that it was a painting. And the area it would smell. There was so much garbage. I don't know, years and years and years of garbage piled up in front of it. And I went back about 6 months later to do some documentation on it. And that had all been cleaned up. There was a small white sort of picket fence next to it. There were flowers. There was a sort of a plaza area put in front of it, beautifully landscaped. And that was one of those things that I had always wanted to happen. Never seemed like it did to that extreme. But it did. It really did uplift that area, and people began to take pride in that area, and it began to be altered, you know, from what I had been able to do, my ultimate fantasy. I really hate to see anything vandalized. I hate to see anybody putting spray paint on anything that they don't have permission to put spray paint on. It has nothing to do with the quality. It has to do with permission. It has to do with respect, with courtesy. I remember reading Kenneth Clark's Civilization, and he always equated delayed gratification to a civilized people. Civilized people delayed their gratification, and that's what people do that come to art school. They're delaying because they're not going out and making money and doing whatever. They're sacrificing in order to have a better tomorrow, and that's what civilizations do, that make a better tomorrow, as opposed to barbarians who have to have it right now and instant gratification. I think probably when my work is vandalized, it makes me think more and more about doing gallery work than before, because it used to be a different environment. The 60s and the 70s were really a very altruistic public out there. I'm a public artist. I I think getting someone to adopt my work is the solution rather than to stop doing public art. I do think more in terms now, since there is more and more vandalism, of doing murals or pieces that are protected, that are in an environment that maybe is fenced in, or maybe even some interior work. But I still love public art. I love making impact on a public space.